Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show. Nonsense. How could Lin Li believe it? Others might not know the origin of the item in his hand, but how could he not know? That was what he got straight from the body of the Dragon of Destruction, Azarda's. How could it not possess any WYRM's aura? Surely the WYRMS in Endless World couldn't be much different from the WYRMS in Amrel? No. Just as Lin Li was in a state of bewilderment, Kanoris started mumbling to himself. That stone of yours is odd. The aura it emits isn't from the WYRM, it's even stronger. Could it be that there's a creature in Amrel that's more powerful than the WYRM? Lin Li pursed his lips, and thought, you almost frightened me to death. Azarda's was the Dragon of Destruction, one of the 4 dragon aspects in Endless World. If it hadn't been for the hole in the Endless World, perhaps even God himself couldn't have killed it. How could something from an ordinary WYRM compare with one from the Dragon of Destruction? Strange. Where did you get such a powerful thing from? It's none of your business, Lin Li snapped. He raised his head with worry and looked at the Dragon Hawk Queen in the sky. The blazing flame and fire elements it released were unbridled. Lin Li knew it wasn't long before the next dragon breath attack. If you have time, use it to think of a way out. We'll never see the day if the Dragon Hawk Queen doesn't go away. What ways would I have? At the mention of this, Kanoris felt aggrieved and began to grumble. You'll have to blame yourself. If you were stronger, and I'm not even saying the legendary realm, if you were at least level 18, you could summon the eternal furnace from the fissure of the world of void. Then, we could use the magical crystal from a fire WYRM to drive the Dragon Hawk Queen away. So what if I know the weakness of the Dragon Hawk Queen? Do you expect me, a hammer, to fight on your behalf? Then, how? We'll just have to make a Hail Mary effort. Didn't you say this stone was taken from a WYRM's body? We've no other choice, anyway. We'll just have to give this stone a try. If it doesn't work, you'll just have to resign yourself to fate, alright. Oh, yes, what kind of WYRM was it? Lin Li pondered, and replied, it should be a fire WYRM. Try to stimulate it with fire magic. If it's really a fire magical crystal, the stimulation will most likely drive its power out. But, to be honest, I'm not 100% confident either. At this point, Kanoris suddenly exclaimed, to hell. What? Before Lin Li could finish his sentence, he heard a clear, long howl coming from above him, and a red light swept across the sky. In that moment, Lin Li felt like he was enveloped by a scorching breath. Fuck, this is too despicable. The thought crossed his mind in a flash. He didn't even have the time to curse out before he was drowned in the heat wave in an instant. It all came too fast. Without warning, the Dragon Hawk Queen swooped in and released a dragon breath. The dragon breath was directed straight to the woods Lin Li and Shan were hiding. The fiery dragon breath fell, and tens of meters of forest was reduced to ashes in the blink of an eye. In that instant, Lin Li felt as if he had been baked, and as if his body didn't belong to himself. He felt only numbness from head to toe. Under the surging heat wave, he was like a kite being sent out into the distance. Lin Li only had time to release a frost shield in hopes that this thin layer of protection could reduce the impact of the flame for himself. However, how could a frost shield resist a dragon breath that was near legendary level? The frost shield turned into a puddle of water as soon as Lin Li finished his recitation, and the puddle very soon evaporated. What followed was numbness, then an excruciating pain. Lin Li felt as if his body was torn apart. The pain was even more severe than having a sharp knife stuck in his body. Lin Li lay in a pile of ashes after the fire. He had lost the support of his legs, and his left hand limped weakly. Lin Li knew that it had been broken by the impact just now. His right hand, which was still functional at the moment, was holding onto the stone tightly. The Dragon Hawk Queen was rampantly venting its anger. The gorgeous red figure glided across the sky above the forest with its long flaming tail in tow. Its cries, which were getting louder and louder, were filled with anger and impatience. Its sharp eyes were flashing red as they swept through the woods. Lin Li knew that it was searching for the dragon hawk egg. Once the egg was found, Shan would have to be burned to death. Hold on. Shan. It was only then that Lin Li realized Shan had been gone. Where did the culprit who'd started this mess flee to? The whole woods had been burned to the ground with the dragon breath earlier. Lin Li barely managed to keep himself alive with the frost shield. Shan was far lacking in strength as compared to him, and didn't have any frost shield on him. Could he be dead already? Darn, the dragon hawk's egg was still with him. Panicked, Lin Li couldn't care less about pain. He gritted his teeth and struggled to get up from the ground. But as soon as he moved, he felt a burning sensation coming from his hands. Then, he saw a gush of red light, which instantly lit up the whole earth. The red light was even more scorching and dazzling than the previous one. As soon as the red light lit up, another growl sounded from the sky. The curling flames dispersed in an instant. The dragon hawk queen at present looked just like any other ordinary bird. It seemed to have seen something horrible when faced with the dazzling red light. Its long howls were full of fear and despair, and its slender wings were curled up into a pitiful position in the sky. Lin Li could even see its body, which was covered by those gorgeous feathers, shivering in the wind. Indeed, Lin Li's heart descended back into place at last. Canoris was right, the dragon hawk had an innate fear of the Wyrm's aura. It was the same with the queen. Indeed, only the word fear could describe the dragon hawk queen's state at present. It dared not even look directly at the brilliant red light as it buried its red skull between its wings. Lin Li could even hear a trace of plea in its sorrowful cries. Lin Li was dumbfounded. He saw with his own eyes how the mighty dragon hawk queen from before turned into a pitiful little rabbit. Get out of here. Lin Li raised his right hand high at once, and a surging mental strength emanated instantly. The stone on his hand seemed to feel his mind, and the brilliant red light became more intense immediately. In that moment, the whole world was illuminated by the red light. Everything, the sky, the earth, the ashes, and the mud, seemed to be shrouded in this red brilliance. It was followed by a shrill howl from the skies. The dragon hawk queen could no longer resist the majesty of the Wyrm. After a cry of despair, it finally unfolded its slender wings and disappeared in the tumultuous dark clouds with its gorgeous flaming tail. Phew, Lin Li let out a long sigh of relief at last as he watched the dragon hawk queen leave. At this moment, he felt as if his whole body had been emptied. He was without a trace of strength, nor could he feel the slightest joy. Even the pain in his body seemed to disappear suddenly, and he simply sat upright on the ground. The fist-sized stone was still burning with the bright red light. But Lin Li didn't feel any discomfort at all. There was neither the pain from the heat, nor the glare from the light. There was only a warm feeling rising from the bottom of his heart. It was as if it wasn't a scorching stone in his hand, but a delicate hand warmer instead. Lin Li could even feel his badly traumatized body recovering at an amazing speed. Whether it was his burned back or his broken left hand, they seemed to have been revitalized. The amazing recovery speed startled even him, a pharmacist. This was totally unreasonable. Every injured part of the body was completely healed in an instant, regardless of how serious the injury or what the cause of injury was. This doesn't make sense, does it? Lin Li stood there with his mouth agape. He was absolutely stupefied. Help! Lin Li suddenly heard a weak cry for help. Upon listening carefully, he realized it was actually Shan's voice. That fatso still alive? Flustered, Lin Li hurriedly looked all around, but he couldn't find Shan's plump figure even after a long while. I'm below you. Ah? Lin Li started in surprise and quickly looked down. He didn't know whether he should feel amused at the situation. He was actually sitting on the fatso all along. However, Lin Li was not to be blamed. The fellow's posture was too inconspicuous. Shan had kept his backpack on his chest when the dragon breath came down. Then, under the impact of the heat wave, he naturally lay face down on the ground, His whole body seemed to be buried under the thick mud mixed with ashes. If it weren't for his timely call for help, Lin Li would probably still be sitting on him. "Oh, sorry," Lin Li scratched his head and stood up embarrassedly. Fortunately, the fatso had a thick flesh, and was still in one piece after being sat on. "PFF, PFF," the fatso got up and began spitting all the mud out from his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, he felt something moving on his chest. For a moment, the expression changed on Sean's face. Mr. Mage, what?" Lin Li was slightly stunned. "I think it came out." "Ah?" Lin Li jumped in fright. There were only two of them in this wilderness. Any man with a lack of nerves would be frightened to death when being told it came out. What gibberish was that? Don't say things that'll lay ourselves open to suspicion, alright? Sean, this ain't funny. Huh. Have a look yourself. Sean stretched his finger out and pointed to the backpack he was carrying on the front. His right hand was trembling as he spoke. Lin Li frowned and opened the bag. Then, he witnessed an awfully bizarre scene. Almost as soon as he stretched out his hand to open the backpack, a fiery glow burst out and pounced on Lin Li. Fuck. Lin Li was almost scared out of his wits at that moment. How come there's another dragon hawk? Lin Li saw clearly when the ball of red light burst out. Those red feathers, slender wings, the magnificent and almost arrogant aura were the exact same as the dragon hawk queen's. We're fucked this time, Lin Li thought he would pass out, but very soon, he realized a problem. Wrong. The wings of the dragon hawk queen could reach more than 10 meters when stretched out. How could a lousy backpack hold it? Surely the backpack couldn't have been another ring of endless storm? A thought flashed across Lin Li's mind. A little dragon hawk. It couldn't be wrong, it had to be a little dragon hawk. This is too uncanny, Lin Li was dizzy for a moment. This little dragon hawk had picked a crucial time to hatch. Lin Li had scared its mother away a moment ago, and now it hatched from the egg and came onto him. Was it trying to seek revenge for its mother? Lin Li couldn't help but swallow his saliva with much difficulty at the thought of it. But when he looked down, he realized that the little dragon hawk seemed to have no intention of revenge. It was rubbing itself affectionately against Lin Li's body. There was some attachment in its low, tender howls, like a newborn baby beast acting cutely in front of its mother. This time, Lin Li was really taken aback. Canoris, you'd better come out. Lin Li held on to the little dragon hawk's head to prevent it from snuggling into his arms while he looked out for Canoris. Canoris was too sly. It had been faking death since it came down from the dragon breath. How could it be killed by the dragon breath when it was cast by the eternal furnace? Stop shouting and look at what's at your feet, Canoris' weak voice could be heard coming from below. Lin Li saw that the fellow was half buried among the ashes, and its head was resting on a burnt tree branch. Stop playing dead. The dragon hawk queen had long been gone. Lin Li grabbed onto the little dragon hawk with one hand while he pulled Canoris out with the other. What happened? Why does this little fella keep clinging on to me? I think that it might have thought that you are its dad. Ha ha ha, Canoris chuckled. Maybe it sees you as its mom too, he continued irresponsibly. You are its real mom. Everyone in your family is its mom. Lin Li scolded in exasperation, but he was really at a loss what to do. Fuck, what do I do? This fur ball is really clinging to me. Could it really be that it thought I'm its dad or mom? Although he knew a few tricks for taming magical beasts, the taming of dragon hawks needed to start right when it was still in the womb. Or else, it would be really hard to deal with, like this situation. The more Lin Li looked at it, the cuter it became to him. It really seemed to be treating Lin Li as its mom when it rubbed itself against him. Yet, magical beasts were magical beasts. No one knew what it would be like were it to grow up. Wouldn't it be very unfair if it were to turn against him then? I say, Canoris, will this little fella turn against me when it grows up? How could it be? Don't you feel that it is closer to you than its true mom? After laughing at Lin Li's misfortune, he asked skeptically, oh, yes. Did you really acquire that rock in your hand from the body of the WYRM? Are you thinking that I'm lying to you? I understand now. What do you understand? I understand why it loves to cling on to you. You are really lucky. Tell me quickly. It's very simple. There is a little bit of WYRM blood in Dragon Hawks, and the rock in your hand is from a WYRM. If I'm not wrong, the rock in your hand must be the magical crystal from one of the fire element WYRMs. Its energy suddenly got activated due to the breath of the Dragon Hawk Queen just now. That energy not only frightened the Dragon Hawk Queen, but also hatched the little fella in your arms. But, what does it have to do with me? Although Kenora's reasoning was clear, Lin Li still could not fathom it. While he understood how the energy emitted by the magical crystal could hatch a dragon hawk, he did not understand why he was involved in the matter. Since there were 2 humans and 1 hammer present, why did the little dragon hawk choose himself to cling onto? Could it be that I am more like a nanny? Lin Li rubbed his nose awkwardly. If I'm not wrong, you transferred mental strength into the magical crystal, right? Lin Li paused for a while. He could not help but admit, I think I did. Isn't that why? Although the dragon breath activated the energy within the magical crystal, the real thing that hatched the dragon hawk is the mental strength you transferred to it. If it does not cling to you, why would it even come to me? Why do I have such bad luck? Lin Li was so regretful. If he knew that the Dragon Hawk Queen was that timid, he would not have used his mental strength and create such a mess. Bad luck? Kenoris exclaimed in rage. If it had legs, it would have jumped up. That's such a great giveaway. Don't you know how lucky you are? How am I even lucky? Can you look at what you are carrying in your arms? That is an offspring of the Dragon Hawk Queen. It not only has the purest blood of the WYRMs, but was also hatched by their energy. Although I'm not sure what abilities it will have when it grows up, I'm certain that it would not be worse than that salamander. Lin Li drew in cold breath. Looking at Kenoris in his hands, and then at the furry thing in his arms, he had difficulty breathing for a moment. He could not imagine that the little fella snuggling in his arms would grow up to be a legendary magical creature that would be more powerful than the salamander. I believe it now, Kenoris said in bewilderment. Believe what? Now, I believe that you really have the ability to rebuild the eternal furnace. For all your good fortunes. From the Fire Plume Ridge to the Cinder Woods, I've never seen you suffer even a little. Despite all the dangers, you always could avoid them while gaining the greatest advantage out of it. No choice, my personality decided everything for me. Lin Li shrugged his shoulders shamelessly as he carried Kenoris on his back and the little fella in his arms gently. Sean, you see, Lin Li said as he smiled at the stupefied Sean. Why yes, Sean replied as he swallowed his saliva. He really saw everything, even a talking hammer. What are you thinking? Lin Li asked. He wanted to discuss the little dragon hawk with Sean, but he realized that Sean was looking at himself dumbfoundedly as though he had seen a ghost. What? What is that monster? Huh? Lin Li was surprised by Sean's question. Yet, he understood his concern quickly. That Sean was referring to had to be Kenoris on his back. Are you referring to this? It's just a sly old hammer. Fear not, apart from knowing how to say some words, it is no different from a normal hammer, Lin Li smiled as he pointed to Kenoris. Crap. I am an honorable soul trader. Kenoris fidgeted unhappily on Lin Li's back, but was stopped by Lin Li quickly. Shut up, or I'll put you inside the ring. Alright, Sean. It's just a talking hammer. Since you have seen the Dragon Hawk Queen, there's nothing to be scared of, Lin Li assured Sean smilingly after silencing Kenoris. And? You saw the situation just now. Strictly speaking, it was my mistake to cause it to only recognize me, which means I cannot even return it to you. Why don't you tell me what you always wanted? No matter if it is equipment or a potion, I will think of a way to repay you with it. This, Sean scratched his head hesitantly. Don't be shy, just tell me, Lin Li encouraged Sean. He looked at his hesitant expression, knowing that he had to have something he really wanted, but was scared that it might be too pricey. The other time I saw Sean paused, and shook his head vigorously. Forget it actually, that's too valuable. Speak. Lin Li said with frustration as he nearly gave Sean a kick. He was very clear about what he'd gained after that unexpected incident, a future, legendary magical beast. Although it was not his intention, the little thing in his arms only responded to him. It was a harsh reality that he'd snatched Sean's opportunity to become the master of the Dragon Hawk. Now, he just hoped what Sean wanted would be something very valuable so that he could assuage his guilt. It was a dagger, Sean said softly, his voice like the sound of a buzzing mosquito. It's sold in one of the weapon shops along the Silver Pine Street. But, Mr. Mage, its price was too exorbitant. They requested 1 million gold coins. Bring me there when we return. Okay. Maybe it was due to the arrival of the Dragon Hawk Queen, but the Cinder Woods was extremely quiet. There was neither the sound of the cold wind nor menacing growls of magical beasts, only dead silence. They did not have any trouble in their journey out of the forest at all. Even for that cave that was said to be extremely complicated, they passed through it easily with Sean's guidance. Yet, when they were near the place Sean mentioned, Lin Li was shocked by a figure that descended from the sky. Thank God, I've finally found you, Anduin's voice was riddled with anxiety and relief. When he swooped down with the help of the power of flight, he did not realize that his long robe was torn by the tree branches on his way down. Why are you here, Earm? The old man stuttered upon hearing Lin Li's question. Damn. Lin Li suddenly understood the reason. It was no wonder that the teleportation portal broke down so mysteriously, and that he landed in the Cinder Woods so randomly. Both were all due to this old dude. I say, Mr. Mentor, you have already lived for over 100 years. Can you not go overboard? Please understand that we are now in the Cinder Woods. If something dreadful were to happen to me, who is going to take care of you after this? Didn't I do it for your good? Anduin flushed as he tried to explain himself. For my good? Lin Li nearly burst out laughing. So, you tampered with the teleportation portal, and sent me to this freaking forest? The Dragon Hawk Queen was just an accident. Anduin shook his head as he said patiently, actually, once you've entered the teleportation portal, I had been using a crystal ball to observe the Cinder Woods. Who knew that you were that unlucky to meet the invincible Dragon Hawk Queen the moment you stepped in? Why? Because I wanted you to adapt to the change in power dynamics. Your improvement in strength for the past month was really unusual. If it continued, it would not be good for you. Hence, I chose the Cinder Woods as the special environment here will weaken your powers. It will allow you to better understand and control the changes in your abilities. Really? Lin Li asked skeptically, but he had already accepted Anduin's explanation. He was extremely clear about the old man's concerns. Even if the entire world want to harm himself, the old man wouldn't. Lin Li's earlier show of dissatisfaction, as well as his questioning of Anduin, were just his venting of the complicated feelings after the terrifying incident. When did I even lie to you? Anduin was naturally clear what were Lin Li's feelings. Let's go back to the Twilight Forest. The teleportation portal is just in front. Anduin patted Lin Li's shoulders. All right. Lin Li nodded his head obediently. Then, he turned to look at the fat bandit. Sean, do you still have anything to do in the Cinder Woods? Want to go back with us? Sean hesitated. He really wanted to join Lin Li, yet he feared that Anduin might not agree to it. Anduin was a powerful man at the legendary level. To Sean, it was not somebody he could associate with. Let alone going back to the Twilight Forest with him, even if he had a chance to hear Anduin speak a few words, it was already a great deal to Sean. Don't look at me. Since Felix was the one who wanted to invite you along, I naturally would have no objections. How would Anduin, a man who had lived for more than 100 years, not know what Sean was thinking about? He shrugged his shoulders as he brought them towards the portal. While walking, he looked at the furry thing in Lin Li's arms, curiously. Oh, yes. Felix, why are you still carrying that little fella? It is a long story, Lin Li replied helplessly, and repeated the story he'd told Kanoris earlier. The story continued for around half an hour. Before they knew it, the trio was already beside the entrance of the portal. Even though Lin Li's story was just a summary, Anduin was still stunned by it. Although he'd monitored the situation in the Cinder Woods through a crystal ball, how could he notice the delicate hatching of the little dragon hawk that was caused by the energy of a WYRM? On top of that, when the old man had seen the appearance of the dragon hawk queen, he'd become really anxious. How would he have the time to care about the hatching of the little dragon hawk? How could there be such a coincidence? Anduin was stunned after he heard about it. Lin Li only lived in the tower for 10 days. The rest of the time was wasted in the Cinder Woods. He worked under Anduin's supervision almost every single day in the Twilight Forest and the Cinder Woods. The reasons were quite varied. Anduin could tamper with a teleportation portal for one day, and hide some herbs the next day. The following day, he could be requesting to eat some specialty food from the Cinder Woods. Damn it, what specialty food is there in the Cinder Woods? Are you going to eat the mud there? Every time he heard those excuses, Lin Li could not help but roll his eyes. Lin Li could not defy Anduin's instructions. How could he not know the intentions of the old man? Anduin just wanted him to have more experience with the Cinder Woods so that he could adapt to the fluctuations in his magical abilities. Honestly speaking, it was really a strange feeling. In the morning, he had the abilities of a level 15 archmage. Yet, his abilities deteriorated to level 14 in the afternoon. Then, at night, it returned to normal again. For the period of 10 days, Lin Li nearly became a schizophrenic. The benefits, however, were clear. Almost every morning, Lin Li would have a surprising discovery from the new changes in him. Those changes might not be obvious to outsiders, but Lin Li could clearly feel that the accumulation of these changes was like being reborn. Yet, Lin Li was still a level 15 archmage after the 10 days. Although the improvement was not visible, he'd gained unimaginable insights over himself and the control of his strength. In comparison, he'd previously been only an oblivious kiddo who had good weapons. If his luck was good, he could kill 2 men. Yet, if it was bad, he could even injure himself. As the days passed by gradually, Lin Li became more adept in controlling his magical powers. Especially so for those spells that were at the archmage level. He'd previously needed to use rapid recitation when he needed to employ the levitation spell. However, when he returned from the Cinder Woods, he did not even need to use gestures. He just had to use a little bit of mana to activate the element structure to cast this archmage level spell instantaneously. Just like anyone else, Lin Li, a man who feared death, would not reject the opportunity to increase his power. At the start, when he was thrown into the Cinder Woods by Anduin, he would still sulk a little. Yet, after he realized the changes in him, he gave up complaining and focused on battling with a variety of magical beasts in the Cinder Woods. Even if he were to return to the tower at night, he would be researching all the different types of archmage level spells till midnight. It could be said that Lin Li worked in these 10 days the hardest since he'd left Gerosis. Lin Li had looked through all the spells below level 15 within 10 days. He was always seen with a huge pile of books when he returned to his room at night every day. When he passed by Lin Li's room every night, Anduin always saw the light inside shining brightly while a figure donning a long robe was leaning against a table. There would be the sound of recitation in a low voice and weak magical waves emitting from the room. Anduin would sigh unbearably upon seeing how Lin Li forgot his meals when he was at work. Tonight, Lin Li likewise went into his room right after eating dinner. What was different from the past few days was that in front of him was not a pile of books, but an old parchment. It was a scroll with a level 15 spell that was lost for generations. Macklin gave it to him after he helped to forge a magical weapon when he just arrived at Alana. Now, that long-lost spell was right in front of Lin Li. Lin Li still remembered that Macklin once told him the spell on the parchment was called mental disruption. Once a person comprehended it, they would be able to use their own mental strength to disrupt the spell his opponents were trying to cast. If he were to use it well, it was like another mana retroaction. Children would know that battles between mages depended on who was able to unleash a stronger spell. If either side suddenly had a mana retroaction, how horrifying would it be? However, the focus of Lin Li's research was not to understand how to use that spell. With his familiarity with the abilities of archmages, a level 15 spell was a no-brainer. He only needed to look up the element structure to be able to unleash it the same way. Although the mental disruption spell had been lost for a long time, Lin Li only spent 1 or 2 hours on it. However, after he understood the spell, Lin Li had new concerns. The mana retroaction, together with the arcane wall from the dragon's eye, was more than enough to deal with any opponent of the same level. Yet, the additional mental disruption spell might have a belaboring effect in dealing with opponents that were too mighty. What he should think of should be survival, and not how to use mana retroaction. Hence, Lin Li changed his research's focus. Among the level 15 spells, the structure with mental disruption was not complicated. There was minimal use of the High Elf's language on the parchment. It meant that there were few details written in High Elf's language. For a man who had already reached the Archmage realm, Lin Li naturally understood that spells with a simpler structure would be easier to modify. But, if mental disruption could distract opponents from casting spells, would mental blast work as well? To other people, it might be a joke. Unless the abilities of the two opposing parties were starkly different, or either of them had extremely high magic attainments, none could employ pure attacking spells to injure any enemy. How would a normal mage have such a great mental strength? Mental strength was required in elemental sequencing and controlling powers. It was the same principle in the regaining of mana. It was like money. People knew gold coins were valuable things, yet everyone felt that they did not have enough coins. Only a freak like Lin Li would think of touching the mental blast effect. His mental strength was too strong. Regardless of the elemental sequencing, he could complete any games in an instant. Despite the great mana involved, he could control it proficiently. Have you seen how much water from the sea dried up, and how a bottomless pit got filled to the brim? In Lin Li's few months in Amril, he never needed to worry about his control over his mana. Lin Li spent most of the entire night staring at the yellowish parchment. He was thinking of a solution to separate the mental blast segment from the spell. But, it was not as easy as expected. Any minute errors would result in great destruction. Even the creator of the spell might not know its impacts. It might cause the entire structure of the spell to collapse, or produce an entirely new spell. There would definitely make an impact. Felix, why are you not sleeping yet? Anduin walked into the room all of a sudden. Oh. I'm looking into a spell. Lin Li turned to look at Anduin, who entered his room, casually without knocking on the open door. What spell is it that is worth spending so much time looking at? Anduin walked to Lin Li's desk and picked up the old parchment paper. Eh? Is this the mental disruption spell? From Macklin? How do you know? Lin Li asked, curiously. Of course I know. Anduin smiled as he placed the parchment back on the table. I clearly saw how Macklin recorded the spell on the scroll back then. That fella thought I would not be able to find out about it if he did it sneakily in the library. He should have better understanding that the Supreme Council is not a place where any random archmage can commit dishonest deeds. You mean that the contents of this scroll have dubious background? Not quite. We had decided to let that fella go to the library to record some spells as our welcome gift to him. Who knew that this fella was that presumptuous to sneak into the library himself, and escaped right away he got the mental disruption spell? Lin Li was very speechless. He knew that only Macklin would resort to such a despicable act. After explaining, Anduin asked Lin Li, curiously, why are you so interested in this spell? I just want to know more about it. Since it's so late already, you should stop dwelling on it. If you are interested, I can bring you to the Sky Castle one day. I know the creator of the spell. You would be able to comprehend it after you talk to him. You know the creator of the spell? Lin Li's eyes lit up. That entire night, he had been researching how to isolate the section with mental blast. Until now, he'd only gained a little bit of inspiration. However, there were a few runes written in the High Elf's print that gave him some dilemma. He could not decide how to modify the runes such that he would not affect the section with mental blast. If only we could ask the creator of this spell, Lin Li could not help but hope for an easy way out. Of course, it was just a dream. How could he meet somebody who could create a level 15 spell that easily? Never did he expect that the old man would say that. I know him, of course, Anduin pursed his lips. The creator of the spell is my colleague, Sir Lothar. He is a very interesting man. If you are free, I can bring you to meet him, then you can ask him whatever questions you want. Alright, Lin Li smiled. He stopped looking at that parchment and rolled it into his pocket. Since Anduin knew the man, Lin Li would be able to meet the creator very quickly. Why would he need to waste his energy on those freaking runes? I say, you shouldn't have anything on after the competition in Alana, right? Until then, I can bring you to a place and introduce Sir Lothar to you. That will do, Lin Li replied after thinking for a moment. The two of them continued to discuss their schedule after the competition. Then, just when Anduin wanted to retire to his room, Lin Li suddenly remembered something. Oh, yes. I have something with me written in the High Elf's print. Can you help translate it for me? High Elf's print. Anduin paused for a moment. He reached out his bony arm and said, "Let me see." Hold on. Lin Li opened the Ring of Endless Storm and searched for quite a while before finding those two rags. Eh? Anduin received the rags and his expression suddenly changed. He frowned as he scanned through the unusual runes. After reading the contents of both rags, he pieced the two of them together carefully. Then, he took them to the table to look at them again. Lin Li's heart was also suspended in the air. At this point in time, he was trying to suppress all of his questions. He did not even draw any deeper breath as he feared it might disturb Anduin. There certainly would be some issues with the two rags. Anduin looked up and asked Lin Li seriously, "Felix, tell me, where did you find them?" Where? Lin Li repeated his question, and thought for a moment. I found one in the Sunset Mountains. It was given to me by a thunder gorilla. The other one was from Jirian. He found it in the treasury of the Merlin family, Lin Li answered honestly. Merlin family? Anduin smirked. I knew it would be with them. What's the problem? Lin Li froze. He could not help but feel weird. Although Anduin was from Jirosa's Guild of Magic, he spent little time in the Emerald Tower. How could he have any issues with the Merlin family? This time Anduin did not reply directly. Felix, do you know that the things in your hands are related to a crucial secret, he said gravely. What's the secret? You should have heard about Osric, right? Nonsense, Lin Li pursed his lips. How could he not know him? Before the High Elves collapsed, the great leader Osric built a massive mausoleum for himself. Everyone in the world of Amril knows about it, Anduin said with a smile, and his tone was dripping with sarcasm. Almost everyone knew that Osric had hidden some things in that mausoleum. However, most thought that it was all his wealth. None used their brains to think about why Osric would be interested in wealth when the entire Felon Kingdom belonged to him. Do you know what were the treasures? Lin Li gradually figured it out now. Anduin said nothing. He gave Lin Li a light nod. What I'm going to tell you now is a top secret, a secret that very few people in the Supreme Council know about. Continue. Lin Li prepared himself for what Anduin was about to say. In reality, the Supreme Council has gotten a hold of some information on the mausoleum many years back. We have always been looking into it all this while. That was the reason why we traveled to the Sunset Mountains, and how I met you. Of course, that was not important. What I wanted to say is, if our information is correct, we are very sure that the treasure inside the mausoleum is not wealth, but a weapon. A weapon that had the ability to destroy the entire Felon Kingdom. Anduin paused for a while. However, I can't imagine what weapon could destroy the whole of Felon Kingdom, he continued doubtfully. Freak, Lin Li exclaimed nervously. He knew what the treasure was. The focus of the Supreme Council was not wrong. The treasure inside the mausoleum was indeed a weapon. To be exact, it was a part of the weapon. And that weapon was the eternal furnace. What's the matter? Anduin couldn't help but ask after he realized the changes in Lin Li's expression. Nothing, you can continue, Lin Li shook his head. He'd briefly told Anduin about the eternal furnace before, and left out a lot of details. If he were to properly explain everything to him, he would need an entire day to do so. Hence, he wanted to wait for Anduin to tell him more about the two rags, before Lin Li slowly told him about it. But, no one could ascertain the existence of that weapon. With our limited resources, we couldn't help it. Those precious documents from the Dark Age have long been swallowed by flames of war. Even if with my authority on the High Elves, I can't confirm any assumptions at all. After saying that, Anduin picked up the two rags again. But, with these two things, we should be able to conclude our research. Is it related to these two things? Yes. Anduin nodded as he pieced the two cloths on the table. His bony finger underlined a section of the High Elf's print. Have a look at this. No, I've forgotten you do not know how to read the High Elf's print. It generally means that before the collapse of the High Elf's kingdom, Osric knew his life was coming to an end. Hence, he let a powerful weapon accompany his eternal rest. Apart from this section, what does the rest of the print mean? In layman's term, this is a map of a mausoleum. But, the High Elves are different from humans. They do not like monotonous lines, and felt that the High Elves' language is the most perfect language in the entire world. Look, since the High Elves use riddles to communicate, there's this line, the fangs hidden in the darkness welcome every uninvited guest. What? Look at this line too. The asleep hero is going to gain eternal life within the flames and ice. So, you are saying that the whole mausoleum is filled with more complicated sentences like these? You're right. Did they have nothing else better to do? But, it is not related to what I'm researching. I'm not interested whether Osric actually hid any weapon in the mausoleum. The weapon is best buried deep underground and never to be discovered. If one weapon is enough to destroy the entire Felon kingdom, I wonder what else that lunatic Osric had done, complained Anduin as he rolled up the two rags. Felic, can I discuss something with you? What is it? Can you lend me these two things first? I want to bring them back to the Supreme Council, to let the others have a look at it. I can give it to you too, Lin Li pursed his lips. After all, he couldn't read the High Elf's print. But, before you take it away, can you translate a copy of it for me? What, are you interested in Osric's mausoleum too? Lin Li nodded, and replied frankly, if there is a chance, I might go and take a look. Since it was left behind by the great leader, there might be unexpected discoveries. Then you must be very careful. The High Elves were beyond proficient in the use of curses. Yeah, I understand. The two men continued talking for an hour until they felt overcome by tiredness. After reminding Lin Li about other things to take note of, Anduin yawned as he returned to his room. Lin Li, however, could not fall asleep at all. He tossed and turned in the bed, his mind still on the two rags. There was one thing Anduin wasn't clear when he told him about the rags, how the Merlin family was related to them. Why did he say he knew it when the Merlin family was mentioned? Doesn't that mean that Anduin long knew their family would be related to the cloths? After leaving Gerosis, the Merlin family did not bother him anymore. After Cromwell died in battle and old Merlin mysteriously disappeared, the Merlin family was not considered a threat anymore. However, the situation now gave Lin Li an unspoken edginess. Come through think of it, the disappearance of old Merlin was too unusual. Lin Li could not shut his lids for the entire night. His mind was filled with a lot of things. He only managed to fall asleep unknowingly when the sky turned brighter. He fell into a deep sleep until the wailing sound of the hungry little dragon hawk woke him up. That's so weird. Why didn't that old man wake me up today? Lin Li asked as he got out of bed. Just when he wanted to find some food for the little fella, he noticed a note on the table. I'm leaving first, were the only few words in the note. Sean, let's pack up. We're going back to Alana. Since Anduin had left, there was no reason for Lin Li to stay here anymore. He called Sean down and headed out of Anduin's tower after packing his things. Lin Li's luck was rather good this time. Although the roads in the Twilight Forest were rather complicated, he did not get lost with the help of the fat bandit. After reaching Alana successfully, Sean spoke up. "Oh, yes. Mr. Mage, I will not be entering the city with you, because I still need to prepare the tricolored flowers you were asking for. Why don't you give me a time and place, and I deliver it to you immediately when I'm ready?" "Yes, that will be good." Lin Li nodded. He pointed in the direction of the Guild of Magic, and said, "I will meet you at the entrance of the Guild of Magic tomorrow afternoon." "Okay." After sending Sean off, Lin Li carried the little dragon hawk and walked towards the guild's entrance slowly. Since the finals was nearing and he had nothing much to do, he decided to walk around Alana. He took an hour to travel from the north of the city to the Guild of Magic. Lin Li used the entire afternoon to bring the little dragon hawk around. After Lin Li was satisfied with patronizing different stalls, and the little dragon hawk was happy with all the food it ate, the little fella curled in Lin Li's arms and fell asleep soundly. Lin Li only reached the Alana Guild of Magic in the evening. Who knew that before he even walked into the guild hall, he saw a familiar figure in the corner of the street. "What a coincidence, Argus." "What coincidence are you talking about?" "I am here to look for you," Argus replied as he looked around furtively. "I have some information with regards to the things you asked me to find out the other time," he spoke in a low voice. "Oh?" Upon hearing that, Lin Li withdrew his joking expression. After scanning the surroundings carefully, he brought Argus to an isolated area. "Tell me more." "According to what I know, when that equipment was out of the marathon smithy, it was sent to the north." "Are you sure?" "Of course." Argus nodded confidently. "The person that told me that was a supervisor in Marathon Smithing Workshop. I saved his life when he was still an adventurer. He would never lie to me." It seems like I'm guessing it correctly. At that stage, it was clear that Gerosis was in the north of Felon Kingdom. "Oh, yes. Did you see Matthias recently?" Argus asked hesitantly as Lin Li trembled in rage. "Nope, I was not in Alana these 10 days. Did something happen to Matthias?" Argus hesitated for a moment, but still said the truth. "I don't know either, but I can sense that Matthias has started to be wary of me." "You are saying that Matthias knows you are keeping in touch with me?" Lin Li frowned. It was not good news to him. No. I don't think it is that serious." Argus shook his head, but the expression on his face turned anxious. "But I can tell that Matthias trusts me less than before. Maybe your failure in the Fire Plume Ridge upset him." It might be due to that, too," Argus replied. "Don't worry. No one else knows about this matter. As long as we don't tell anyone, it will be a secret forever," Lin Li assured while patting Argus's shoulders. He knew what Argus was worrying about. "Hope so then." Argus forced out a smile, but his expression did not become even a bit better. "All right, you go back first. Update me again if you need to. Don't come to the Guild of Magic like today. If Matthias were to find out, you wouldn't be able to explain it to him," Lin Li advised Argus after realizing that the sky was getting dark. "No, it is all right. Matthias has not been coming to the Guild of Magic for a few days already," Argus told Lin Li. "Oh, yes. Matthias's ability is improving at considerable speed. He was close to level 15 the last time I saw him." "What?" This time, Lin Li was really taken aback. "Matthias is close to level 15 already?" Lin Li was very aware of Matthias's ability. Matthias was still around level 11 when Lin Li had first come to Alana, at most a little better than Mason and Orin. Yet, to be able to advance from at most level 12 to nearly level 15 was terrifying. Lin Li managed to achieve that just with the trial in Shadowglen and his experience in the Omniscient Tower. Despite being envied by Anduin for his talent, Lin Li had not even improved at such a monstrous speed before. How could it be possible for Matthias? Did Matthias take in the energy from the WYRM like he did? "I feel that it is unusual too," agreed Argus. "I saw him twice these few days. He grew even stronger the second time I saw him. It was as if he was a different person. He became very weird. Alright. Thanks, Argus. I will take note of him. After sending him away, Lin Li returned to the Guild of Magic. He did not know why the guild hall was so quiet and empty today. There were only a few young mages, all rushing around anxiously as though they all had important things to attend to. What is the situation now? Lin Li went back to his place full of doubts. He was surprised to see only Mason there. Warren, who hated to move around, and Kevin, who loved to visit them, were absent. As for Sean, that usually would not come back, let's just consider him non-existent. No one knew it was because he got tortured too harshly by Oren, but Mason seemed to have changed much in personality. At this time, he was actually sitting in the room alone with just a magic book. He was so immersed in the book that he did not realize Lin Li came in. "Brother Mason, why are you alone?" asked Lin Li after he settled the little dragon hawk down. "Oh. Felix, you're back?" Mason jerked up from the sound of the knocking on his door. "I say, where have you been these days? How could you disappear for over 10 days just like that?" Mason asked. He was surprised by Lin Li's appearance. "I went out for a while, and brought you some good things." "Like what?" "Shoo." Lin Li reached into his pocket mysteriously and fished out a few scrolls. "I copied these in secret. Go and split this with Oren, and don't let anyone know." Oh, as Mason received those scrolls, he realized those were all spells between level 10 and level 15. They were so rare that one might not be able to find them in the Omniscient Tower. Mason was so elated that he had no time to wipe his drool from excitement. He laid the scrolls on the table and started to pick those he was interested in. "Oh, yes. Brother Mason, where are the others?" Lin Li asked casually. "The others?" Mason looked up from the pile of scrolls. "Oh yeah. I would have forgotten about him if you did not mention him. Kevin and that pretty boy went to watch some fun." "Why aren't they back yet?" "What's interesting?" "Haha, it is something great." The mention of this diverted Mason's attention from the scrolls. He pulled a chair over and started explaining. "The Guild of Magic is really full of life these few days. Renowned people kept visiting us, for whatever reasons. Prince Lionheart Jonathan came a few days ago, followed by Assassin Oro from Ruby Moon and Archbishop Inlos. Oh. The person that visited today is even unexpected. Felix, I'm sure you would not guess it correctly. Other than that fatso from Glittergold Trade Union, I really don't know who would come," Lin Li said as he pursed his lips. Mason gaped at him. "What's wrong?" How did you know?" Mason stuttered, staring blankly at Lin Li like he was a ghost. Lin Li pursed his lips. "Wasn't that obvious? Other than these old fellas, who would make their way to the Guild of Magic? Trouble's big. What if Macklin brings them over?" Lin Li looked around guiltily. "This is a little complicated to explain now." "Oh, yes. Brother Mason, why are you spending your entire afternoon here reading books? I bet you haven't had your lunch. Why don't we go out to find a place for food? I'm very hungry." "Oh, you're right," Mason scratched his head. He suddenly realized he had not eaten. "Give me a while," Mason said as he put the magic book aside. "Which scroll should I pass to that pretty boy?" Mason pondered as he held on to the scrolls. He could not bear to share them with Oren. "I shall decide that later," Mason said as he put all the scrolls in his pocket unreservedly. After coming out from the Guild of Magic, the guild hall was still quiet. Thank God, Lin Li wiped his cold sweat. He was still glad for his good luck in not bumping into that old man Macklin. However, his joy did not last long. He was greeted by a voice behind him. "What a coincidence, Mage Felix." "Huh?" Lin Li jumped. He saw it was Sarsen when he turned around. Lin Li also saw someone he despised behind Sarsen. "Hee, good evening, Mage Sarsen and Mage Gryffindor," Lin Li greeted them with a superficial smile. Deep inside, he was very curious how Sarsen and Gryffindor ended up together. Lin Li clearly remembered that when he'd first come to Alana, that top mage from Felon was not really friendly toward him. Furthermore, that man was not on good terms with Oren. Lin Li just could not bring himself to have any good impression of that man at all. I met Mage Gryffindor when I went out to settle some things. So, we came back together. Although Sarsen was an arrogant man, he did not dare to show his egocentric nature in front of Lin Li. He had seen clearly how the Pharmacists' Guild sent for a coach to escort that man, as well as how the people there treated him with utmost respect. Even Sarsen's niece could understand that the mage named Felix was not any random man on the streets. Gryffindor nodded his head, and agreed reluctantly, yeah. He clearly remembered that man to be Oren's teammate. His relationship with Oren could be likened to water and fire. When he was 10, his mentor brought him all over Felon Kingdom to almost all magic guilds. He fought almost all young mages, including Oren. Oren had been a level 9 mage back then, while Gryffindor a level 8 mage. They were both young talents who had attracted the attention of many. In the end, Oren defeated Gryffindor with his level 9 abilities after much difficulty. That battle became a lifelong stain on Gryffindor's pride. After returning to Alana, he had always been thinking of ways to defeat Oren. He researched into magic every minute tirelessly. With the help of his talent, he'd managed to break into the magic shooter realm. His subsequent improvement could be described as vigorous. He had the abilities of a level 14 magic shooter at a young age. After 3 years, when Gryffindor challenged all the magic guilds again, he finally defeated Oren at Rotterdam. But, to Gryffindor, a battle was not enough to erase that disgrace from 3 years earlier. He hoped his mentor would let him meet Oren during the finals. Gryffindor knew that the finals allowed mages to make mistakes, such as inflicting too much injuries. As for the 2 teammates Oren had, he was never concerned about them. He understood the reason why Felix could emerge victorious against Macklin in the arena. Gryffindor clearly saw Macklin suppressing his energy and underestimating his opponent. He did not doubt that he would lose to Felix. He was only a little surprised. Gryffindor clearly knew that the last time Macklin lost to Felix was due to Macklin suppressing his abilities and his personal underestimation of his opponent. As for that Oren who'd just reached level 10, he was not even an ant in front of him. How would 2 ants, one big and one small, deserve his respect? Of course, if the bigger ant was willing to be nice to him, he might not reject it. Yeah, just like what Sarsen did. After all, he was one of the only 2 archmages in this trial. After he clinched the championship and set up his new guild, he would need some manpower. Since his mentor would be busy with work in the Supreme Council, he needed to depend on what he had. An obedient archmage would be of great help to him. After acknowledging him slightly, Gryffindor had been waiting for Lin Li to suck up to him. Then, he would just casually act humbly and friendly to him, allowing Lin Li to be less awkward and at the same time maintain his own status. Yeah, just like how he treated Sarsen. Gryffindor believed that he did not need to wait long for Lin Li to do it. Since he was much more powerful than the other mages participating in the trial, it was common sense for them to suck up to him in order to be treated less harshly later. Furthermore, the finals allowed accidents. If he were to inflict too harsh a blow, it would be a pity to die due to that. In the end, Gryffindor waited for quite a while, only to realize the fella named Felix had no intentions of getting close to himself. He continued to talk to Sarsen about meaningless things such as the weather and about life. Gryffindor frowned, and got unhappy. He could not understand why meaningless things could be more important as compared to being friends with himself. It concerned life and death. If Gryffindor were to hate on Lin Li, he could just exert more force in the finals and a corpse would be sent back to Gerosis. Having had the title as the magic genius of Felon, Gryffindor had forever been the center of attention anywhere he went. Unlike the usual, it was the first time he was treated like air today. After feeling surprised, an unexplainable rage rose from his heart. How could the country bumpkin from Gerosis treat him as though he was invisible? Gryffindor was fuming. If Sarsen was not there, he would turn and leave on Felix. What was so great about a country bumpkin having the abilities of an archmage? How could Felix belittle him? Yet, after looking at Sarsen beside him, he swallowed his anger. Since the country mage had no background, if he were to kill Felix in the finals, no one would step in. On the contrary, he had to ensure he would not put Sarsen in a hard position. As his mentor was the president of the Nightfall City Guild of Magic, he would need a lot of his help after he set up the new guild in Breezy Plains. Gryffindor tried his best to suppress his rage as two men conversed. Oh, yes. Mage Felix, I heard Mr. Macklin said you left the guild for quite some time. Ever since he saw how respectful the two pharmacists were to Lin Li, Sarsen knew clearly that this young mage from Gerosis was not someone he should trifle with. Furthermore, as Sarsen was not very close to Lin Li, like Mason and Orin, he needed to watch his language and speak to him courteously. Gryffindor could not help but be infuriated when he saw how Sarsen treated Lin Li. I had no choice either. My dear mentor felt that I'm too weak and needed more practice. The old man instructed me to go places as part of training, Lin Li grumbled. He was half lying. Hee, Mr. Macklin is like that. He is known to be strict toward his students, Sarsen comforted Lin Li, assuming that the mentor Lin Li mentioned was Macklin. In reality, Macklin was the only mentor that would treat his students so harshly. Sarsen did not expect the real mentor Lin Li was referring to as one that had even higher expectations compared to Macklin. Actually, Lin Li paused. Since Sarsen assumed that mentor was Macklin, Lin Li was not that foolish to correct him. He took the chance to weave some more complaints about Macklin, framing the poor innocent old man. Sarsen seemed to be engrossed in the conversation, and had no intention to leave. Gryffindor, on the other hand, was already very impatient. If he could, he really wanted to leave them. He could not suppress his disdain when he saw that country bumpkin. Gryffindor felt that Sarsen must have lost his mind to treat that mage from Gerosis with extreme kindness. Did he think all archmages were invincible? Was he hoping that the bumpkin would be less harsh on him during the finals? What a joke. So what if he was an archmage? He was just a more skillful one among his age group. Compared to the other mages in the whole of Felon Kingdom, he was a nobody. He had neither social status nor background. Apart from that trial and becoming the student of Macklin by luck, what other abilities did he have? Furthermore, if Sarsen wanted Felix to go easy on him at the finals, he had to ensure Felix would not be killed first. Gryffindor had heard that a moron had offended Matthias the moment he arrived in Alana. He found out that the fool's name was Felix after he asked further. What an idiot, Gryffindor mumbled as he rolled his eyes. He could not understand why there would be such a stupid fella who dared to offend Matthias. Who was Matthias? He was the son of Wilhelm, the second heir of the Marathon family. Even Gryffindor would never want to offend Matthias himself. Why did that mindless dude from Gerosis do that? At this moment, Gryffindor really hoped to tell Sarsen to stop talking to Felix. It was meaningless to flatter somebody who was not going to make it to the finals. He was sure that people from the Marathon family would be after Felix. Not even his mentor, Macklin, would dare to offend the family just to save a student from that mess. Of course, Gryffindor could not say those thoughts out loud. Even if he were to say it, he would not say it in front of Lin Li. Hence, he remained quiet grumpily. Oh dear, it's so late now. I'm so sorry, Mage Sarsen, I have to go. Lin Li apologized to Sarsen after noticing how dark the sky was. He wanted to end the conversation quickly, fearing that he would need to take quite some time to find a restaurant to have his meal at this rush hour. Let's talk again next time, then, Sarsen said as he smiled. Just when he wanted to leave with Gryffindor, they heard the sound of a conversation. The voices belonged to a few archmages in the guild, as well as Mr. Macklin. Oh, there was an unfamiliar voice too. When Sarsen was still trying to figure out whom that voice belonged to, Lin Li frowned, knowing that it was his unlucky day. If he were to know he was going to meet him, he would not have stayed to chat with Sarsen. I need to escape quickly. Mage Sarsen, I'm going to take my leave now. Lin Li had no time to care anymore. After bidding Sarsen goodbye in a hurry, he turned towards the exit of the guild hall. However, after he made his first step, Macklin spoke. Felix, you are here. I was looking for you. No one knew what Macklin was up to. His old and wrinkly face was grinning widely as he walked down the stairs in high spirits. Others might think that this old dude found his second spring. Can you not find me? Lin Li asked impatiently after seeing the fatso behind Macklin. Didn't he promise Hoffman he was going to take some days to consider his offer? Why was he so anxious to make his way to the Guild of Magic to look for him? And you too, come over here too. Macklin gestured to Sarsen and Gryffindor while he grabbed onto Lin Li, who was trying to make his escape. Let me introduce Hoffman to you. He is from the Glitter Gold Trade Union. I'm sure you have heard his name, right? Hoffman, Sarsen repeated the name in bewilderment. How could he not have heard of Hoffman's name? Hoffman was not only the man managing nearly half of the businesses in the Glitter Gold Trade Union, but also an esteemed conjurer. If he were to stamp his feet lightly on Breezy Plains, the entire Breezy Plains would shake. On top of that, Sarsen had heard from his mentor that this Mr. Hoffman in front of him was a true master pharmacist. Oh God, he is a master in pharmaceutics. Sarsen had never dreamed to be able to meet a master pharmacist in his entire life. With Mr. Hoffman, who were those pharmacists who made things difficult for his mentor, and the two fellas that treated him with disdain? Although the title pharmacist and master pharmacist only differed by a single word, the actual difference in status was as wide as the distance of heaven and hell. It's my pleasure to meet you, Master Hoffman. Sarsen stuttered as he greeted the man. As compared to Sarsen, Gryffindor was relatively calmer. Since his mentor was from the Supreme Council, he had a lot of encounters with renowned individuals. He was surprised at first, but managed to calm down quickly. Mr. Hoffman, you need to know these young men. This is Alana's Gryffindor, Nightfall City's Sarsen, and Jerosis's Felix. The old man frowned, and continued his speech when he saw Mason looking at him with excitement. And Mason from Chevan City. They are all the top few young mages in the trial. Macklin, there's no need to introduce them to me. How would I not know the top mage of Felon, Gryffindor? Also, I knew Mage Sarsen since he was from Nightfall City, the neighboring county with Breezy Plains. There have been many talents coming from Nightfall City these few years. I've never expected to meet one here today. Since Hoffman was a businessman, he was adept in the art of flattery. No one would think those words were mere politeness. It was as though he was really praising these young mages from his heart. Although Gryffindor smiled humbly, he was very surprised. He had never expected that Hoffman would have heard of his name. How could he not know who Hoffman was? Hoffman was one of the decision-makers of the Glitter Gold Trade Union, managing nearly half of the union's business single-handedly. Not only that, he was also a level 17 conjurer that many legendary figures would not dare to offend. He'd never expected that the friendly fatso was a master pharmacist too. How would Gryffindor not know what it meant to be a master pharmacist in Felon Kingdom? Even his mentor would need to treat Hoffman with ample respect. Gryffindor did not expect his title of the top mage of Felon would travel into the ears of Hoffman. Gryffindor could not suppress his excitement. Look, even Master Hoffman knows my name. Gryffindor looked at Sarsen, then at Mason and Lin Li. A sense of superiority rose in him. He felt that the two men should feel ashamed for standing beside himself. How could a country bumpkin from Jerosa City and a trash from Chevan City stand together with him? Take a good look at yourself later. You will know what it means to be ashamed when Mr. Hoffman says he does not recognize you. As for Mage Felix, Hoffman said as he looked at Lin Li with extreme friendliness. Yeah, Lin Li put aside his manners to interrupt Hoffman. I knew Master Hoffman long ago. I still remembered I sold him some herbs when I was still at Jerosis. How were they, Master Hoffman? They were great, right? I have more of them with me now. Do you want to buy more? Yeah, Lin Li put aside his manners to interrupt Hoffman. I knew Master Hoffman long ago. I still remembered I sold him some herbs when I was still at Jerosis. How were they, Master Hoffman? They were great, right? I have more of them with me now. Do you want to buy more? Felix, Macklin rolled his eyes speechlessly. How could the fella talk about that in front of everybody? What was he thinking? Gryffindor could not hide his smirk. A country bumpkin would always be a country bumpkin. Did he think he could get close with Master Hoffman just by selling some herbs to him? He should stand in front of the mirror to reassess his status before speaking. Hoffman seemed like a friendly man with no scheming intentions. However, as one of the decision-makers of the Glitter Gold Trade Union, how could he not know how to observe the actions of others? Seeing how Felix interrupted his speech with such a random story, he understood that this genius pharmacist wanted to hide something. Hoffman stopped, hesitating. Can we talk about herbs next time? He played along with Lin Li. Of course, we can discuss it whenever you are free. Hearing that, Hoffman felt relieved. Of course they were going to discuss about the formula of the potion. If that genius pharmacist were to agree to help him, his problem would be solved. Just when Hoffman wanted to invite Lin Li for a chat, Gryffindor stood out with noble indignation. Mage Felix, I hope you know what you are doing. This is Alana Guild of Magic, not the black market of Gerosis. If you want to promote your herbs, you should do it elsewhere. Do not disturb such a noble guest like Master Hoffman, Gryffindor spoke gravely. He even brought the reputation of the guild out. Even if Macklin had the intentions to speak for Lin Li, he could only sigh helplessly, hoping that his student would not create too much of a trouble. Hoffman stood there speechlessly. Did that fella believe he really heard about him long ago? Now he even stood out to defend Hoffman. God damn it, why would I need you to speak for me? Do you think you are really a genius when people call you the top mage of Felon? If you are going to mess up my plans, I'm going to have people spike your food. Mage Gryffindor, Lin Li said calmly, albeit with a tinge of sarcasm. How does this got anything to do with you? How does it got to do with me? Gryffindor smiled with disdain. He looked at Lin Li as though he was a beggar. Mage Felix, I hope that you understand that Master Hoffman is a noble guest invited by the guild. Who do you think you are to advertise your herbs to him? Are you telling Master Hoffman that our guild had no resources to provide for a newbie, and that he needs to live off his earnings from the sale of the herbs? That's weird. Lin Li looked at the surroundings before speaking to Sarsen seriously. Mage Sarsen, can you tell me if there is a rule in the guild that forbids students to sell herbs in the period of their trial? Sarsen hesitated awkwardly. After thinking about it carefully, he shook his head, and replied, nope, there isn't. Mage Gryffindor, did you hear that? Mage Felix. Gryffindor was infuriated. Now, as the steward of the guild, I'm going to order you to stop your pointless promotion of herbs and apologize to Master Hoffman. Then, you are going to serve your sentence in the dungeons. His voice was raised by a few pitches. After he said that, even Macklin was stunned. He'd never expected that Gryffindor would abuse his authority. Indeed, Gryffindor could send students to the dungeons with his position as the steward. But, how was Felix an ordinary student? Gryffindor was not even comparable to him. They still had to depend on Felix's mood to decide who would obtain the key to Osric's mausoleum after 6 months. Was Gryffindor crazy to want to throw him in the dungeons like that? Furthermore, how could one use the dungeons so recklessly? That place was exclusively for the traitors of the guild. Was Gryffindor crazy? Gryffindor. Don't you forget Felix is my student in the trial. Are you going to send him into the dungeon right in front of me? Macklin asked furiously. Mr. Macklin, although I always respected you, I must still remind you that it is time to teach your student. Gryffindor's tone was stiff. His anger that had been accumulating from the start finally got unleashed. Damn you country bumpkin, how dare you treat me with such indifference and spoil the reputation of the guild? If I'm going to let you go, I'm not Gryffindor. Are you worrying too much? Master Hoffman has not even said a word. Why are you so agitated? Lin Li pursed his lips. He did not care about the steward at all. Since you said so, why don't we let Master Hoffman decide? This time, Gryffindor was more agreeable. He thought that since it was a domestic matter that concerned the guild, and Hoffman was not close to that fella, he would make no comments and allow Gryffindor to send Felix to the dungeons. Honestly speaking, Gryffindor guessed it half right. Although the two men had only met twice, Hoffman really hoped to forge a closer bond with this genius pharmacist. Mage Felix, I'm really interested in the batch of herbs you have. Why don't we discuss the details over some drinks? I know a good place near here, Hoffman offered passionately right after Gryffindor said that. After hearing that, Gryffindor froze. He'd never expected that the highly master pharmacist Hoffman would want to purchase herbs from a Gerosis country bumpkin. Freak, what is this absurdity? How would a poor boy from Gerosis be able to grow any herbs himself? Could it be that he had some special herbs that interested a master pharmacist like Hoffman? God damn it, that fella was really lucky to be able to get close to a figure like Hoffman just because of a bunch of herbs. If he knew it was so easy to get close to Hoffman, he would have patronized the black market for any rare herbs before coming back. Then, he would be the one getting close to Hoffman. What a miscalculation. After all, he only needed a few millions to get some rare herbs in exchange for a good relationship with Hoffman. He felt so dumb to have missed this opportunity that would bring him 1,000 benefits. Gryffindor stood there in a daze. He was filled with mixed feelings. I haven't eaten, Lin Li exclaimed. No one would expect Lin Li to be so informal with Hoffman. Even Mason felt like kicking him because of that. Macklin was extremely speechless. He was so done with Lin Li. Only this fellow would dare to ask for a meal that shamelessly when Hoffman offered to treat him to a drink. His student was such a glutton. All right. Let's go and eat. Hoffman did not care whether Lin Li wanted to eat or drink. As long as he could sit down with this genius pharmacist and agree on the formula of the potion, he would find ways to give him anything he wanted, even if Lin Li wished to eat the moon. All right, Lin Li said with a satisfied smile, and nodded his head strongly. Before leaving, he looked at Gryffindor challengingly. What a busybody, Lin Li remarked scornfully at a volume that Gryffindor could hear. You, Gryffindor, felt the veins on his forehead bulging. Just when he was ready to unleash all his fury, that fella and his foolish teammate had long left the guild hall with Hoffman. After exiting the guild hall, Hoffman invited the two men up his luxurious coach ingratiatingly. He specially ordered his driver to send them to the highest-class restaurant in Atlanta. With the amount of wealth he had, he would not treat someone at the normal small restaurants. Moreover, Felix was no ordinary man. He was a genius pharmacist that shook the entire pharmacist community in Felon Kingdom. Spending more to treat this man would not be unacceptable. Oh, yes. Master Felix, how do you think of my request the other time? Hoffman asked excitedly the moment they got onto the coach. Sure. This time, Lin Li was very direct. Lin Li felt that it was a favor he owed Hoffman for going along with his acting earlier on in the guild hall. Furthermore, that book of 10,000 incantations was a good thing that even a legendary figure like Anduin would drool to get. If Lin Li could get that book, even if he was not going to use it, he could gift it to Anduin as an act of filial piety. After all, that old man taught him so many things, but Lin Li had not repaid his kindness yet. That's great. Hoffman became very excited. He fished out a crystal card from his pocket and said, Master Felix, this is a VIP card from the Glitter Gold Bank with 1,000,000 gold coins. You can withdraw the amount at any of our branches. Please accept it. Lin Li thought for a moment. Then, I'm going to accept it. That's what I should do. Hoffman nearly teared with joy. He finally had a chance to solve that problem after a few months. With that potion, Glitter Gold Bank would be able to earn 100 times in profit. How much would 1,000,000 gold coins and the book of 10,000 incantations cost to exchange for that? Lin Li had time for a break during the subsequent days. After settling the formula with Hoffman, he stayed in the Guild of Magic. Every day, he would visit the Omniscient Tower to read and go to the battling arena to practice with Mason and Orin. He felt very carefree. Of course, carefree only applied to Lin Li. To Mason and Orin, these few days were the most fulfilling ever since they came to Atlanta. They reaped many benefits every time they practiced with Lin Li. Not everyone had an opportunity to train with an archmage. What was more, this archmage was their closest teammate. This allowed Lin Li to better analyze their strategies and suggest ways for them to improve. The two men improved greatly after 10 days. That morning, Mason finally had a breakthrough and left behind his status of a rookie magic shooter. Although Oren did not experience any breakthroughs, his abilities were much better than Mason's. No one knew what Oren went through these days. He became quieter than before. When Lin Li asked him things, he only replied by nodding or shaking his head. Replying with a yeah had become the furthest Oren would go if he had no other choice. At the same time, the amount of effort he put into magic was abnormal. He would visit the Omniscient Tower before sunrise and only come back fatigued after his two teammates fell asleep. Oren got more and more serious after every practice session the trio had every other day. He would take a very long time to reflect on Lin Li's suggestions and drag Mason to test out his new strategy with him. His extreme perseverance and hard work finally paid off when he improved every single day. After 10 days, he became just a step away from level 14. Naturally, Mason felt his improvement the most. Initially, Mason could still win in the practice sessions between both men. But, recently, he realized that he felt he was lagging behind. When he stood in front of Oren, he had no strength to return his attacks. He was completely suppressed right from his first move, and received multiple explosive attacks, just like how an adult beat up a child. In the end, Mason decided to hide whenever he saw Oren. The pretty boy had become too freaky. Mason would rather get tortured by Felix and not let Oren destroy his confidence. There was nothing to be ashamed if he were to lose to an archmage. However, Mason could not take the blow if he were to lose to a magic shooter. What was more, he was a pretty boy magic shooter. Furthermore, Felix did not have much free time. Unlike that pretty boy, Felix only had time to torture him occasionally. On the other hand, Oren would not stop if he was not satisfied with beating Mason up. Indeed, Lin Li did not have much time. He spent most of his time in the Omniscient Tower. Lin Li learned a lot over the course of the 10 days in Cinder Woods, and wanted to consolidate his knowledge in preparation for the finals. But, this time, he was not at the first or second floor. He went straight to the 15th floor to rummage through all the spells rigorously. Only Lin Li would do this type of thing. Normal mages would climb one level every 1 or 2 years. Yet, when they reached level 15, it would be very difficult to advance anymore. Many mages who were less able would be stuck at their level until they died. However, Lin Li was not like them. He had already prepared for spells that were above level 15, waiting to advance after breaking through the higher levels. Lin Li's rapid improvement caused his level to advance far ahead of the level of the spells he knew. Now that he reached the archmage level, he had the liberty to learn all the spells he wanted to. When that fellow was hungry for knowledge, he would just copy all of them down regardless of whether they were useful or not. In these 10 days, the archmages around him always saw Lin Li coming with a pen in the morning and leaving with a huge pile of scrolls at night. It was fortunate that the Omniscient Tower provided blank scrolls for readers, or else Lin Li would need to spend a huge amount of money to fund his quest of copying. Of course, none of the level 15 archmages would think that this young man had no qualifications to visit the 15th floor. Everyone knew who he was. He was the youngest archmage from Alana Guild of Magic, the one who defeated Macklin a few days ago. If he did not have the right to visit the 15th level, who else had the right to do so? Good morning, Felix. Two familiar archmages would always greet Lin Li whenever he went to the 15th floor. Since all of them frequented the library, they naturally knew each other. Not only that, Lin Li was well liked by them too. He always had a humble smile and treated people with extreme politeness. Even though they were on good terms with the Marathon family, they could not find any faults with Lin Li. Gradually, they grew to accept the young man. Good morning. Lin Li greeted the archmages warmly. After exchanging greetings, he found a seat and took out the magic book from the day before. That book had insights and notes from a legendary mage living 300 years ago. It focused on helping one improve on the technique of unleashing spells. Although Lin Li was fast in casting spells, he relied heavily on his natural abilities. His strong mental strength allowed him to compress the time he took to cast spells by a large extent. He did not have to worry about facing the bite of mana at all. In fact, it did not require much technique from him. He was like a man with invincible strength, allowing him to have the natural ability to lift a huge rock. Furthermore, Lin Li always had the mentality to make use of this natural talent and not delve into techniques. His experience in the Cinder Woods gave him a new perspective. The environment there not only suppressed his strength, but also weakened his entire body. Regardless of mana or mental strength, the battles that happened during those 10 days became the most awkward battles Lin Li had ever fought in the world of Anril. Having a weakened mental strength and mana, as well as abilities capped at level 15, he had missed many magical beasts, which he could have easily killed in usual settings. The feeling was so unnatural that Lin Li had no choice but to cease many crucial attacks in fear of the bite of mana when he was able to unleash them with ease on normal days. Then, Lin Li had to pick up his weapon and physically fight the beasts, which were above level 10. He really regretted not learning more methods to unleash his spells. After transferring all the level 15 spells, he went on to search for books that could teach him more techniques related to casting spells. In fact, Lin Li found one that was written by a legendary mage. He spent 2 days to figure out the gist of the concepts, but could only try them out slowly in his subsequent battles. Even though it was like that, the extent of Lin Li's improvements across those 10 days was not what normal people could imagine. He had no choice too. He had too much room for improvement. Before learning about those techniques, he was like a blank piece of paper. He had been relying on his powerful mental strength all this while. Now that he had mastered different types of insights pertaining to the various methods, it was natural for him to have unbelievable improvement straight from the start. Although the improvements were not obvious at a glance, they were definitely there. One could only see them during a real battle. Ugh, if I came early by a few hundred years, I would have asked this legendary mage personally. Maybe my improvement would be even greater, Lin Li mumbled as he put down the book, thinking if he should go out to eat lunch. At this moment, there was a din outside the door. "Get off, let me in." A frustrated voice could be heard at the door. However, the people on patrol were all magic shooters on the 15th floor of the Omniscient Tower. How would they allow outsiders to trespass the area? The 2 magic shooters gave no room for negotiation and rejected Mason straight away. "No, without the member pass, you are not allowed to the 15th floor. I beg you to let me enter. I have something really important to find my teammate for." As the noise got louder and more anxious, Lin Li finally realized whom the voice belonged to. Damn, that's Mason. Lin Li had no time to care about order. He threw the magic book aside and stood up. His big actions shocked the fellow archmages around him. Fortunately, Lin Li had good relationships with them. When they saw it was Lin Li, they smiled tolerantly and continued to read their materials. Lin Li dashed out of the door and saw Mason and a middle-aged magic shooter having a conflict. The face that was usually filled with smiles and laughter was all anxiety. If there weren't the 2 magic shooters stopping him, he would have dashed into the room. "Brother Mason, what happened?" "Felix, it's bad. Something terrible happened to the pretty boy," Mason exclaimed when he saw Lin Li coming out. He pushed away the 2 magic shooters who were trying to stop him. "What happened to Oren? Calm down and tell me slowly." After comforting Mason, Lin Li turned to look at the 2 magic shooters. "Sorry, guys, this is my friend. He broke the guild rules as he had some urgent matters." "Oh, so he is a friend of Mage Felix. How would the 2 magic shooters not know who Felix was? He was the man who'd won against Macklin in the arena, and the youngest archmage of Alana Guild of Magic. They even heard how a few archmages commented that Felix was going to rise above Gryffindor eventually. How could the 2 men continue to stop Mason when Felix started to apologize to them? They gathered all their smiles and explained to Lin Li apologetically, "We're sorry, Mage Felix, we did not know he was your friend. You know we are stickers to the guild rules. As we did not mean to do it on purpose, please do not mind us." "I understand," Lin Li assured the 2 magic shooters. He knew what they were thinking about, yet could not help but feel amused by their actions. He was not Matthias, so how would he take such minor things to heart? He laughed it off and brought Mason to the side. "Brother Mason, tell me clearly. What exactly happened to Oren?" "It is terrible." Mason gasped, and started explaining. "When we woke up this morning, we realized you were at the Omniscient Tower already. Hence, me and that pretty boy were discussing going to the arena to train. To be honest, I've learned a powerful spell recently, so I was hoping to try it with him. Who'd expect that we'd met Gryffindor and his friend at the arena too?" "Gryffindor?" Lin Li repeated the name nervously. He clearly remembered how the two men had a conflict the first time they met in Alana. If not for the eyes of the public in the guild hall, they would have fought each other on the spot. He knew nothing good would happen should they meet each other in the arena. "Yeah, it's that Gryffindor." Mason confirmed Lin Li's concerns. Gritting his teeth, he continued, "That bastard owed a beating when he showered that pretty boy with sarcastic remarks straight away. He said that the pretty boy was still trash as the pretty boy was still a magic shooter, despite the years that passed. Gryffindor jeered that it was a shame for him to treat Oren as his sole enemy too. Fuck. He could just insult that pretty boy. Why must he insult me too? What's wrong with being a magic shooter? Magic shooters are still humans, aren't they?" Lin Li could not help but roll his eyes. He still could not adapt to Mason's childish way of nonlinear thinking. "So, what happened after that?" "Then, the pretty boy got agitated," Mason continued. He could not help but feel shocked at what he'd witnessed. Frankly speaking, it was really strange. You know that pretty boy, he is not really an agreeable man, treating people as though they owed him a huge amount of money every day, but when did you ever see him being agitated?" His eyes turned red at that instant, and gave bastard Gryffindor a deadly stare as though he was going to bite him into pieces. "That serious?" Lin Li asked, in a daze. Lin Li had long known there was enmity between the two men. Yet, why was Oren so easily disturbed? Oren met Gryffindor quite a few times in the past month. Although they were indifferent towards each other, they had never gotten physical like how they did today. Could there be other things that happened in these few days that he missed out on? "He was just that agitated," Mason said as he sighed. "At first, I thought I could stop that pretty boy. But, afterwards, I did not know what Gryffindor told him. That pretty boy went berserk immediately and unleashed a chilling touch." "Oh my god." Lin Li never felt that vexed. Did Oren eat wrong medicine? Why was he so foolish to attack Gryffindor first? Lin Li knew his abilities were unfathomable when he met him at the guild hall a few days ago. How could he challenge him with a mere level 14 ability when Lin Li himself had no confidence to win facing Gryffindor? This is really bad. How is Oren now? He got attacked by one pyroblast and was already sent to the emergency. F***ck, watch out, Gryffindor. Lin Li cursed through his gritted teeth. "Bring me to Oren now." "Alright." The two men rushed down the Omniscient Tower. When they arrived at the guild's treatment room, they saw Oren unconscious, lying lifelessly on the bed. His usual pale face grew whiter and Lin Li could sense death just by standing outside the room. Macklin was pacing to and fro, beside the bed, while cursing. "God damn it, you are a group of fools. Why are you hired by the guild when you don't even have the ability to find a priest?" "Mr. Macklin, we have tried, but, the two trainees replied meekly while they trembled in fear. "But, there is only a single priest in the whole of Alana, and he had gone back to the Brilliance Shrine last month." "Damn you, Raleigh. So you return to the Brilliance Shrine when I need you now. What the F***ck do you mean when you claim God has love for his people? You'd better stay at your shrine forever and never come back. Or else, I'm not going to forgive you." "The old man's temper has turned from bad to worse," Lin Li mumbled, before pushing the room's door open gently. "Felix, you are finally here," Macklin said as he sighed in relief when he saw Lin Li enter the room. He knew the abilities of this student. Lin Li would be the second person who could save Oren apart from a priest's theurgy. "What happened?" It was all due to that foolish group of people. God damn it, I'm not going to let that bastard Gryffindor off like this. If Oren were to die in the Guild of Magic, how am I supposed to face his mentor? Quick, help me think of a way. Let's save his life first. Let me see, Lin Li said as he nodded and sat in front of Oren's bed to look at his injuries. Lin Li frowned right after that. The effect of pyroblast was not as bad. Although there was blood on his back, Oren's organs were not injured at all. The real thing that endangered his life was another type of energy. When Lin Li sat in front of his bed, he could clearly see how black smoke dispersed from his wounds. Lin Li knew trouble was big when he saw the black fumes. He remembered how the similar fumes could have been found on McGren the other time. But Oren's current situation was worse now. That was right. It was the power of curse. McGren fell under the sleep curse back then. Its effect was average as compared to other curses. 1 bottle of dispelling potion would suffice in clearing 80% of the curse. However, for Oren now, 10 bottles of dispelling potion might not do the trick. This time, Lin Li had a little headache. Although he was proficient in pharmaceutics, he was not skilled in curses. He could not tell what type of curse Oren was put under. The black smoke could only show that Oren's situation was worse than McGren's the previous time. It will not threaten his life yet. Lin Li shook his head and stood up from his chair. He said gravely, but the situation is really bad. We might need to find someone to help us. Find whom? Macklin asked impatiently. I will set off right away. Wait first. After Lin Li stopped him, he took out a glass bottle and said to Mason, Brother Mason, help me get a bottle of clear water and mix this medicine inside. Portion it and feed it to Oren 3 times every 1 hour. Remember, do not give it to him too early, or his body might not be able to take it. All right. Mason nodded and went off to find clear water with the glass bottle in his hands. After thinking for a while, Lin Li took out a crystal card from his pocket. Mr. Macklin, could you send someone to Glittergold Bank for me? Why are you going to the Glittergold Bank? Macklin asked in surprise. To find someone, Lin Li replied as he gave the crystal card to Macklin. Go and find any mage apprentice. Tell him to go to any Glittergold Bank to find Mr. Hoffman for Felix. Say that I would be waiting for him at the Guild of Magic. All right, Macklin received the crystal card and headed off to find Hoffman uneasily. He really did not believe a crystal card could bring Hoffman over. Despite that, he was going to try whatever he could to rescue Oren. If Hoffman was not able to save him, Oren would really die in Alana Guild of Magic this time. Not long after he left, Macklin stopped in his tracks again, and asked, Then where are you going? The curse on Oren is too powerful. I'm going to find a priest to help. Priest? How would there be any other priests in Alana after that bastard, Raleigh, returned to the Brilliant Shrine? I will explain to you when I come back, Lin Li said as he left the treatment room in a hurry. After exiting the guild hall, Lin Li called for a coach to send him in the direction of Dawn Cathedral immediately. It was the only cathedral in Alana with the Brilliant Shrine. If Lin Li did not remember wrongly, when Archbishop Unlos had talked to him the other time, he told Lin Li to look for him there if he were to face any difficulty in the coming month. God damn it, now I owe 2 favors. I'm not going to let you off, Gryffindor. Today, Dawn Cathedral was unusually bustling with activities. When Lin Li went over, he could see at least 10 coaches parked outside the door. Lin Li could not help but feel a little curious. Although he was mostly staying in the Guild of Magic, he would pass by the cathedral when he had errands to run, but Lin Li had never seen Dawn Cathedral so crowded before. Felon was the kingdom of magic. In this land, all children knew being a mage would make one the most successful in his life. They believed in the power of elements and were curious about the mysterious knowledge of magic. Adults were telling them repeatedly ever since they were born to put in hard work to study magic and become a true mage when they grew up. The Brilliant Shrine had been planning to spread Dawn's teachings over this kingdom. Yet, what awaited them was not the blessing of Dawn, but a vigorous rejection they'd never faced before. From royalty to random peasants, none subscribed to Dawn. Their hearts were wholly filled with the pursuit of magic, and could not make any space for dawn. And an owner once said, if a mage and a priest visited his inn at the same time, the mage would get the best service, while the priest could only crouch in a corner to chew on burnt bread. This was the awkward position Dawn Cathedral faced in the Felon Kingdom. Dawn's efforts over few hundred years did not see any rewards. Finally, even the Pope burst out in rage, exclaiming, "Damn those heathens! Go to hell with your damn magic!" In the recent 100 years, no priest was willing to visit the Felon Kingdom. They were all clear that there was no meaning in preaching for dawn there. Even the most religious believer could not help but admit how everyone had magic in their blood, even the miracles that happened to him could not reform them. Dawn Cathedral was one of the few cathedrals in the Felon Kingdom. The unlucky archbishop who was in charge of preaching for the cathedral was a middle-aged fatso named Raleigh. This middle-aged fatso had really bad luck. He was a level 15 priest, but just because he offended an authority figure in the Brilliant Shrine, he got sent to a place like Alana. Not to mention a level 15 priest, no one would tolerate a level 20 priest in the land of Alana. Nobody cared about the holy light and their teachings. In Alana, Raleigh was seen as a good doctor, a free one, though. The only group of people who would step into the Dawn Cathedral regularly would only be those low-level adventurers. What to do if they were to injure their hand due to battling a magical beast and did not want to pay a cent for their treatment? Raleigh was their answer, of course. His theurgy was rather good. Not to mention a level 15 priest, no one would tolerate a level 20 priest in the land of Alana. Nobody cared about the holy light and their teachings. In Alana, Raleigh was seen as a good doctor, a free one, though. The only group of people who would step into the Dawn Cathedral regularly would only be those low-level adventurers. What to do if they were to injure their hand due to battling a magical beast and did not want to pay a cent for their treatment? Raleigh was their answer, of course. His theurgy was rather good. As for the lower-level adventurers, only ghosts knew how many of them were willing to listen to him spread his teachings. No leader of any organization in Alana actually acknowledged him. To them, Raleigh was a pitiful fella. Despite being the archbishop of the Brilliant Shrine, he had zero authority and followers. Although Dawn Cathedral looked extremely grand and holy, it was only the appearance. Inside, it was extremely desolate. Raleigh's days were indeed pathetic. The number of followers he'd gathered was not more than 2 across the 20 years he worked in Alana. His days here felt worse than death. Raleigh had been thinking of all the ways to leave the darn place for the past 2 decades. He definitely was the archbishop that put in the most effort in the whole of the Brilliant Shrine. In a year, he would not be in Alana for at least 6 months, venturing everywhere to establish social ties. All these efforts were just in hopes of being transferred from Alana during his yearly deployment. Hence, he had left Alana again last month. Who'd expect that Dawn Cathedral became so lively after Raleigh's departure? The few young priests were busy greeting the big shots who made their visit. No one came out to invite Lin Li even after he stood at the entrance for 10 minutes. If it were in the past, not only young mages, but also Raleigh himself would run out to invite them inside. Lin Li got restless, standing at the door for such a long period of time. When a young priest walked past him, he stopped him immediately. "May I ask if Archbishop Inlos is in?" "You are." The young priest looked at Lin Li suspiciously. There were too many people who came to look for Archbishop Inlos in the past month. Of course, none of them were religious followers. There were also none willing to believe in the holy light. These people who were visiting the cathedral had no other motive but to get potions from Archbishop Inlos. Being a pharmacist, Archbishop Inlos had no choice too. After so many days, the young priests had already learned how to read their visitors. For example, from the appearance of the unfamiliar mage standing before them, his young age hinted that he had no status. By wearing a normal long robe, it suggested he did not have much money with him. In addition, the anxious expression on his face implied that it was his family or friends who got injured. Without status and money, why did he still go to Dawn Cathedral? They had seen enough for the past 1 month. "I am Felic, from the Guild of Magic." Oh, the young priest nodded, and ordered his guest to leave. Apologies, Mr. Mage, Archbishop Unlos is currently resting. If you are here for medications, I must dissuade you. You are not the only one who came here for medications recently. Lin Li nearly choked on his saliva. He wanted to defend himself, but he knew he had been labeled as an uninvited guest by the young priest. If it was before, Lin Li would just leave. Since there was no point to get into a conflict with the young priests, there was no harm to stay away from them. But, it was different this time. Oren was still lying on the sickbed. If he did not find Inglos, even if Hoffman was proficient in curses, the frail Oren might still not be saved. Get out of my way. Lin Li had no more patience. He pushed the two priests aside, and dashed into the cathedral immediately. The Dawn Cathedral today was not like the usual Dawn Cathedral. There were so many people visiting the cathedral these 10 days. Even if the young priests had been ignored by people previously, they had accumulated enough ire to face the mage that did not know his manners. One of them was fast enough to grab onto Lin Li's long robe, while another went in front of Lin Li to stop him. Stop. Go away. Lin Li screamed. He was very concerned for his bedridden teammate, whom he had known for 2 months. Being pulled back by the robe triggered him, causing him to unleash all the anger that he had been accumulating in a power of repulse. How could the young priest who had not reached level 5 be able to endure the strength of an archmage? Bam! Before the young priest was able to hold on to the robe properly, an impregnable force blew him off. He was like a rock that smashed onto the street opposite of the cathedral. Little fella, let me remind you that this is Dawn Cathedral, where the Brilliant Shrine is. If you dare to play any games with us, your guild of magic might not even have the ability to save you, 2 young priests beside him warned Lin Li sternly. Let me repeat it again. Leave me alone. Lin Li roared and forcefully let out a powerful magical wave. If Mason or Kevin was here, they would know that Lin Li was really enraged. If anyone were to obstruct him, it might cost lives. Unfortunately, these young priests did not understand Lin Li well. Although they were a little afraid of the person standing in front of them, the thought of Archbishop Unlos being with them here allowed them to muster their courage. A few young priests stood at the door and glared at Lin Li fearlessly. The entrance of Dawn Cathedral became a mess at once. People sitting in the cars outside the cathedral looked out of their windows. They were curious who that daring man was to create such a fuss at such a timing. Did he not know that the man inside the cathedral was not that trashy Raleigh, but one of the 4 popes of the Brilliant Shrine in Los? They thought that the young mage was doomed. While the crowd was still commenting on the situation, they felt a strong sense of chill air coming from far. Everybody looked in its direction, only to see a corpse-like old man donning a long black robe alighting the coach. *T, why is that man here? A few knowing people gasped. It was not the first time they saw him since they had been here almost every day. That guy was a monster that slaughtered lives blindly. Hence, while the old man walked down the coach, some of them tried to hide in their cars. They could not help but worry for the young mage. He was doomed. What a waste of talent. Dashing into the cathedral aside, meeting the semi-undead monster showed how bad his luck was. The relationship between the monster and Inglos was not shallow. They did not know if the pitiful young mage was going to be turned into a skeleton or a zombie. No one expected that the young mage would laugh. The more absurd thing was that the corpse-like old man was laughing too. What a coincidence, Master Felik. Sendros had no reason not to laugh. Ever since the gathering at the Pharmacists' Guild, he had been wanting to chat with that pharmaceutical genius. However, the 2 times he visited the Guild of Magic, he was told that Felik was not in. Then, he heard that Fatso Hoffman seemed to have struck a deal with this pharmaceutical genius a few days ago. Sendros felt that he could not wait any further. If it were to continue, the pharmaceutical genius of Felon would be snatched by other forces. That was absolutely not something the Darkness Shrine hoped to see. He was here at Dawn Cathedral to find Inglos to discuss Oren's situation. He hoped that the Darkness Shrine and the Brilliant Shrine would have an opportunity to collaborate. He had not expected such a coincidence, to think he'd meet the pharmaceutical expert even before he found Lin Li. This luck was like a meat pie that dropped from the sky. Not to mention that Sendros was still a semi-undead monster. Even if he became fully undead, he would still laugh completely hysterically. Hee hee. Good afternoon, Master Sendros, Lin Li greeted the man smilingly. He knew the relationship between Sendros and Lin Li. Since Sendros was meeting Lin Li here, Lin Li's plan to see Lin Li shouldn't be an issue. Oh, yes. Is Master Sendros here to look for Archbishop Lin Li? Yeah. As I don't have much to do these few days, I'm coming here to find him for a chat. That's great. I have a matter that needs Archbishop Inglo's attention. Since you also want to go in, can you help me to send a message? Sendros frowned, and asked doubtfully, why don't you go in yourself? If Lin Li knew you are here, he would be very happy. Lin Li paused in his speech and laughed helplessly. How would Sendros not understand his body language? Are you stopping him? Sendros glared at the young priests. His palish face had no expression, but there was a hint of bloodlust in his eyes. Master Sendros, we really did not know this mage is acquainted with you, the young priests muttered while they trembled. They could not believe that the seemingly statusless mage would know Sendros. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Who was Sendros? He was the man who controlled the whole undead army, which had millions of members. To him, lives were mere consumables for his army. In the documentation of the brilliant shrine, Sendros had long been recorded as a bloodthirsty devil. He launched more than 10 massacres, which led to at least thousands of casualties each time. Who wouldn't be scared of such a person? Although the young priests were sincere followers, none of them were fanatics. They were also fearful of Sendros. They feared that the semi-undead monster would kill them and turn them into undead using evil spells. Furthermore, he was a friend of Archbishop Lin Li. That was right, they were friends. People who were not aware of insider information would never understand how a priest who believed in the holy light and a mage who controlled the undead became acquainted. It was obvious that they were best friends, and everyone knew that the evil undead mage, Sendros, could to a large extent influence the decisions of Lin Li. He didn't even have to kill these young priests directly. With just a line from him, they would be doomed. The young priests' faces paled. Their gazes towards Lin Li betrayed their plea to be spared. They knew that the only one they could depend on was the mage. If he would help to speak a few good words, they would be able to live on. They did not dare to stop Lin Li anymore. As long as their lives were intact, what else mattered even if they let another person in? It's only a small misunderstanding. All will be good after some explanation. Lin Li laughed it off. He was definitely not as petty as the young priests. Oh, yes. Are you going to meet Archbishop Lin Li? Can I go with you? Sure. How would Sendros not understand Lin Li intended to forgive the young priests? Hence, Sendros nodded and walked into Dawn Cathedral. Lin Li, look who is with me. Sendros, why are you here? Haha, I'm not here just to see you. I brought you a noble guest too. After seeing his old friend, it was as though a sense of humanity could be seen from the semi-undead monster. His palish face twitched and squeezed out a smile. Lin Li lifted his head suspiciously before grinning in surprise. Master Felix, I didn't expect that you would visit Dawn Cathedral. I still went to the Guild of Magic to look for you twice. Unfortunately, you had not came back. Hee hee, Archbishop Lin Li, you are too courteous. I'm not fit to own the title Master in front of both of you. You should just call me Felix. No. Lin Li said as he invited the two men into the guest room to have a seat. He explained seriously, what you solved was a difficult task that no pharmacist in Felon could solve. Just this is enough for you to bear that title. Oh, yes. Master Felix, why are you free to visit me today? Lin Li scratched his head, and said honestly, one of my friends was cursed. I'm here to find Archbishop Lin Li to help. I wonder if you have the time to do so. I don't mind helping. But, to be honest, I'm not really skilled in curses. Why don't you find Hoffman for help? He is a true master of curse. I have already sent people to invite Mr. Hoffman. However, my friend is in an extremely complicated state this time. He was not only put under a curse, but also badly injured. I fear he might not be able to endure the deep pain while we rid him of the curse. Hence, I hope that your theurgy could heal his body. I can do that, and Los agreed. As one of the 4 archbishops of the Brilliant Shrine, his mastery in theurgy was naturally not something Raleigh could match. Even if he were to injure his arm badly, it could still be easily treated. That's great. Oh, yes. Master Felix, may I ask what curse your friend was put under? I'm not too sure about that. I could only judge from his reactions. That curse, however, is very strange. It was like sizzling black smoke emitting from his wounds. I could also feel that my friend is gradually weakened by the curse. I'm afraid he does not have much time left. I see, Los commented while he sank into deep thoughts. Just when Los was still at a loss of what to do, Sendros interrupted, if I am not wrong, your friend is still in a coma, is he? How do you know? Then that's right, Sendros did not answer Lin Li's question, but continued, I have seen this type of curse before. It is called the Curse of the Dry Soul, a secret spell that has existed since the Dark Age. I remember reading about it from the magic book for the undead. The book states, a real devil can give you great powers if you know how to control it. However, if you don't, the devil would swallow you immediately. Do you mean that this dry soul curse is like a bite of manna? If it failed to injure the opponent, it would harm the caster? Lin Li asked, frowning. Could it be that Orin was not attacked by Gryffindor, but learned a forbidden spell instead? Yeah, that's a possibility, Sendros said as he shook his head. Master Felix. Frankly speaking, this curse is the most troublesome of all. Because it has existed for so many years, it has been in the blood, even if I know the concept, I do not know how to cure it. Sendros, please don't say that. Hoffman might have a way out. Los shot a glare at his old friend. He knew how Sendros would always think of the worst-case scenario. Although he might be right at times, it would not sound comforting to the others. I hope so, Sendros nodded unwillingly. Archbishop Los, do you have time now? If it is possible, can you go and take a look personally? I'm afraid my friend might not be able to wait any longer, Lin Li asked impatiently. No problem, agreed Los, without further ado. Can I go with you? Sendros asked and stood up like Los. All right, both of you please follow me. The 3 men walked out of Dawn Cathedral and rushed to the Guild of Magic in a coach. They left the young priests and the bored passers-by guessing at the noble identity of the young mage who could get the help from the leaders of the Brilliant Shrine and Darkness Shrine. It was no joke. Los was one of the archbishops of Brilliant Shrine, while Sendros had the authority over the whole of the Darkness Shrine. Their status was so high that even His Majesty would not be able to enjoy the same treatment. Those several young priests were especially scared, and broke out in sweat when they saw the leaving coach. If they had known the background of the young mage, they would not have dared to stop him. The coach stopped outside the guild hall. The 2 old men saw a familiar figure the moment they came out of the coach. Ha ha ha. Hoffman, you're here too? Hoffman's round figure was too obvious. Sendros recognized him among the crowd right away after alighting from the coach. Why don't you rush back to Breezy Plains to look after your daughter? Don't regret if she were to elope with a random dude. Fuck. Sendros, what a shameless set of old bones you are. I'm going to spike your food sooner or later. Hoffman was halfway through scolding that Sendros when he realized that Sendros did not need to eat at all. Hence, he added another scornful line. Nope. You do not even need to eat any food. Just scram back to your cemetery and gnaw on corpses. I feel so awkward standing with you. Lin Li was speechless, hearing how the 2 oldies bantered with each other. He decided to step in to mediate their dispute. You two, mind your image. Yeah, Master Felix is right. I'm a successful man. I should not argue with a semi-undead monster, Hoffman scoffed as he entered the guild hall. This fella, Sendros and Inglos mumbled as they shook their heads reluctantly and followed them in. Lin Li led the way and brought the three men to the guild's treatment room. He took some time to tell Hoffman about Oren's situation along the way. Damn. So it's the curse of the dry soul. This is bad, Hoffman commented after hearing Lin Li describe the situation. He could not help but frown at the thought of it. What do you think, Master Hoffman? You, too, can't deal with the dry soul curse? Lin Li asked after seeing Hoffman's expression. Lin Li could not help but grow nervous. If this expert in curses could not deal with it, he knew Oren would really be in grave danger. But it does not mean we have no solution for him. It would just be more troublesome, Hoffman said as he shook his head. He did not say that Oren would surely die, but he could not relax his deep frown. You mean? I mean, Hoffman paused in his words. Forget it, let's go look at your friend first. Maybe his situation is not that serious. Yes. Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.